A strike deep behind enemy lines. A Rosgvardia lieutenant colonel has been eliminated in the Stavropol region. In Nova Kakhovka, a well-known collaborator was destroyed by a Baba Yaga drone. Large-scale fires in the Rostov region. Oil refining facilities are being hit in the southern federal district. Shooting and a series of explosions in Munich. There are casualties and wounded. A Bundeswehr military aircraft was fired upon in Germany. The Czech Republic has banned entry to Russian diplomats. The Taliban have shut down the internet throughout Afghanistan. The country is paralyzed. Hello, my name is Yulia Kokhan, and right now here are the top stories. But first, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. Since the beginning of October, it's gotten cold on the streets, but do you know where it's heating up? No, not by the sea, but in Yaroslavl, Russia. Ukrainian drones set fire to the local oil refinery. Yaroslav Nefteorg Syntez, one of the largest oil refineries in northern Russia, is on fire.
Yaroslav Nefteorg Syntez, Slavneft Yaroslav Nefteorg Syntez, Slavneft Yanos is the largest oil refinery in northern Russia. The plant's capacity is designed to process 15 million tons of oil per year. In terms of primary oil refining volumes, it ranks 5th among oil refineries in Russia. Among the plant's customers are virtually all major enterprises in the central and northwestern regions of Russia, as well as airports, the Northern Railway Administration, and facilities of the military-industrial complex.
Well, of course, officially there have been no reported strikes. The local authorities are wavering between two versions, a rescue drill or that it just happened on its own. They claim the fire is of a technogenic nature. And while the authorities are coming up with explanations, as many as 160 firefighters are battling the blaze.
3 combat zones have been established. At the moment, 32 pieces of equipment and 98 personnel are at work. The firefighting operation is ongoing. That's the situation for now.
And now take a look. Due to drone attacks, 38% of oil refineries in Russia have stopped operating. And the gasoline shortage has reached 20%. And Russian media are reporting on this. Also, the Sukhodolnaya pumping station in the Rostov region has ceased operations. Russian emergency services report that at least 10 drones have crashed on the station's territory. But it's not just about energy. Because besides drones, our partisans are also doing a great job. The Atesh movement carried out a sabotage on a section of the railway. This is the route Russians use to transport shaheds from the factory in Yelabuga to the combat zone.
Our agents set fire to a relay cabinet on the stretch of railway between the settlements of Altisheva and Alatyr in Chuvashia. This led to disruptions in train traffic and caused delays in the delivery of ammunition and shaheds, which the occupiers used to strike at civilians.
How do you like this news? Write your thoughts, don't hold back in the comments. But Russia is not only suffering losses at oil refineries, but also among the so-called elite of the occupiers. Fighters from the GUR eliminated a lieutenant colonel of the Russian National Guard who led the special unit Avangard. This happened back on September 27th. Our intelligence officers were operating deep behind enemy lines in the Stavropol region. Thank you to the GUR operatives for giving us yet another reason to smile. And returning to the enemy's losses. Because Russia now has one less high-ranking collaborator. We're talking about the Gauleiter from Nova Kakhovka, Volodymyr Leontiev, who headed the Occupation Council of Deputies. A UAV from the Ukrainian Armed Forces sent the traitor to Kobzon's concert. The so-called head of the occupied part of Kherson region, Saldo, confirmed the death of his associate in the hospital. Well, may the earth be concrete and fiberglass to him, you know what I mean. And right now, let's talk about news from the front, starting with a brilliant special operation by our defense forces. Special forces from the 73rd Naval Center of the Special Operations Forces attacked the occupiers' positions in Sumy region and... Did they clear them out? A video with fragments of the special operation was posted on his Telegram channel by the editor-in-chief of Censor.net, Yuri Butusov. And now, some more positive news. In Tarasivka, Luhansk region, the Ukrainian Armed Forces struck an ammunition depot belonging to the occupiers. Footage like this of the secondary detonation is circulating online. See for yourself. But now, a spoonful of tar in the honey. The Russians have advanced near Novoivanivka in the Zaporizhzhia region. Ternovin, Stepovin, the Dnipropetrovsk region. This was reported by DeepState. At the same time, according to DeepState, the pace of Russian occupation in September dropped by almost 44%. The occupiers managed to seize 259 square kilometers. Over the course of a month, they were able to occupy 0.04% of the entire area of the country. And now the total figure stands at 19.04%. And now, attention! Russian terrorists are disguising mines as firewood. The occupiers are sending them into border regions where centralized heating is partially unavailable. This was reported by the head of the Derhachi military administration, Vyacheslav Zadorenko. According to him, when a local resident sees such a log and decides to take it home to heat their stove, the mine inside detonates and the person is killed.
And that's how the lid closes on them. That's it, it's over. It lies by the roadside and then detonates.
More about the situation on the front, particularly in the Pokrovsky direction, is being written on Telegram by a soldier with the call sign Muchnoi.
Pokrovsky direction. Strikes with FAB bombs have been recorded on the settlement of Hryshine. Perhaps similar strikes happened before, but now the consequences are clearly visible. The most dangerous thing is that the aerial bombs fell near the entrance to the village, which could indicate preparations for the enemy's next steps. They are deliberately starting to probe the approaches and test our defenses. There's no point in detailing the specifics of the event. The main thing is that these strikes should be taken seriously, as a signal of possible future scenarios. If the Russians are targeting the entrances, it means they plan to create pressure to block access and control logistics. In Pokrovsk itself, the situation remains largely unchanged for now. The fighting continues, but there have been no breakthroughs. In the neighboring direction near Mirnohrad, there hasn't been much noticeable movement either. However, there is a sense of some strange activity. It's likely the bastards are preparing unexpected moves or regrouping. We await further developments.
I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a massive horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you don't have the means to support them financially, write words of encouragement to them in the comments. I know they're watching us. Swedish Gripen jets, additional F-16s and Mirages, new Patriot systems and Tomahawks, all of this is already on its way or being prepared for shipment to Ukraine. The international anti-Putin coalition has sharply intensified its provision of military aid to the armed forces of Ukraine.
To defend more effectively and attack more successfully, the Ukrainian General Staff has confirmed the upcoming transfer of an additional batch of Western fighter jets to the armed forces of Ukraine. In addition, there are new deliveries of Patriot systems from several allies at once. This is also Ukraine in the fall. Ukraine definitely does not intend to leave Moscow's strikes unanswered.
Obviously, the air fleet of our air forces will expand and our capabilities will grow. This is important.
In an interview with the BBC, Ukraine's first Deputy Minister of Defense, Lieutenant General Ivan Havrilyuk, said that Kiev is preparing to receive several types of new aircraft at once.
Havrilyuk was asked when the next deliveries would take place. He replied, "Let's just say when you see them in the skies over Ukraine, then you'll know." Bravo. A very good, correct answer. So that the enemy doesn't understand or know, and so there are no expectations here either. It's a clear, normal, practical and pragmatic position. They'll be in the air carrying out combat missions, and we'll see.
The only thing Havrilyuk revealed was the models of the upcoming reinforcements. So we're talking about a new batch of F-16S, French Mirage 2000S and Swedish Gripens.
These are indeed highly effective and exceptionally powerful aircraft, meticulously developed by the innovative Swedish aerospace industry specifically to skillfully counter a significantly stronger and much better resourced adversary.
Analysts explain that given the number of sorties flown by Ukrainian aviation, the issue of maintainability is far from the least important. It is also extremely important that the aircraft can be equipped with Ukrainian as well as European and American weaponry. After all, supplies to Ukraine are now coming from all over the world, and the Gripen meets these requirements.
The Swedish army has been preparing for all these years, focusing on the Russian Federation. And accordingly, the aviation equipment they developed, specifically the JS-39, was designed to be maintainable, relatively inexpensive, and multifunctional.
At the same time, in terms of maneuverability, they are a cut above all Soviet aircraft and many Western ones, which will give our pilots a clear advantage when operating directly near the front line.
The fighters are very reliable, highly effective, and in some technical aspects, they are even better than the F-16S we expect to receive.
Another addition to Ukraine's air forces will be the French Mirages. These are aircraft already familiar to our pilots and especially often used for long-range strikes with Scalp missiles. In Storm Shadow,
6,900 kilograms of payload. This can include bombs, missiles, a huge variety. Moreover, it can also carry external fuel tanks. Therefore, the payload weight may decrease if greater range is needed, or if it simply needs to stay in the air for a long time. For example, for intercepting something or for patrolling.
At the same time, analysts say these aircraft also perform well during large-scale operations. The point is that French fighter jets have an advanced data transmission system between aircraft which allows them to carry out missions more effectively as a group.
It can operate in communication with AWACS systems, and thanks to this it can see much more, which actually compensates for the shortcomings of its own radar. And the ability to create three-dimensional objects on the display makes ground attacks and low-altitude maneuvers easier. However, it should be noted that the Mirages are specifically designed to operate as a team. They exchange information with each other with ground-based radars and with AWACS systems.
In addition to carrying out more effective strikes, Ukraine will also be able to defend itself more efficiently. According to President Volodymyr Zelensky, Israel delivered an additional Patriot air defense system to us at the end of the summer. 2 more systems are already on their way.
The Israeli system has been operating in Ukraine for a month. We will receive 2 Patriot systems in the fall. All right, that's it. I won't say anything more about the Patriot.
However, the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius was quite willing to talk about it. He confirmed that it is Berlin that is handling the delivery of Patriots to Ukraine, in addition to the 3 already provided. However, the main intrigue regarding the supply of additional weapons to Ukraine today remains the American Tomahawk missiles. The Institute for the Study of War stated that Moscow is already trying to disrupt these deliveries, claiming that in response it may deploy its own Oreshnik in Venezuela. However, according to rumors from Washington, these threats had no effect on the White House.
In Munich, Germany, several explosions and gunfire were reported during the night and morning of October 1st. As a result of the incident, 1 person was killed and another was injured. According to Bild and the Munich police, a large-scale special operation is still ongoing in the city. Law enforcement officers are working in the Lerchenau district. However, that's not all. Earlier, it became known that a German military transport plane was fired upon in Germany. This happened shortly after takeoff from Celle airfield. This was reported by Spiegel. It is reported that the pilots heard a loud explosion. Unknown individuals fired at the transport plane. A pyrotechnic device was used against the C-130, but it did not hit the aircraft. Military personnel and police arrived at the scene, but so far, the suspects have not been found. In addition, in recent days, Germany has recorded mass drone flyovers above critical infrastructure. This was reported by Bild. The publication reports that drones were spotted near a university hospital, a power plant, the local parliament building, and even at a refinery that supplies fuel to the airport. And here's where it gets interesting. All these events happened literally during the same period. What do you think? Is it just a coincidence or not? And who is behind this crime wave in Germany? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Here's the news. Russian diplomats have been shown the door in the Czech Republic, as announced by the country's foreign minister Jan Lipavsky on the social network X.
Today, the government, as I understand it, has banned all Russian diplomats and holders of service passports without accreditation from entering the Czech Republic. The number of sabotage operations is growing, and we are not going to take risks by letting in agents under diplomatic cover. We are setting an example for other countries and will continue to push for the strictest possible measures across the entire Schengen area.
Since the fall of 2023, Prague has been pushing for restrictions on the travel of Russian diplomats within the European Union. According to the Financial Times, the Czech Republic raised this issue during negotiations on the 12th package of EU sanctions against Russia. But at that time, these measures were not included in the list of restrictions. In the summer of 2025, Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky stated that a ban on the free movement of Russian diplomats within the Schengen area could be included in the new 19th package of anti-Russian sanctions. What do you think of the Czech Republic's position? I wonder if other countries will follow the Czech Republic's example. What are your predictions? Denmark is preparing for war against Russia. In Denmark, joint wings of defense exercises have begun, in which Ukrainian specialists in countering strike UAVs are participating alongside their Danish colleagues. In addition, Denmark has mobilized several hundred reservists due to incidents involving drones. Our journalists will provide more details on how the Danes are preparing to repel Russian aggression.
Denmark is preparing for war, all because of the increasing number of Russian drone raids on NATO countries. Russia's hybrid attacks on Europe are happening more and more frequently. And now many countries are taking a series of measures, and Denmark is no exception.
I would call this a hybrid attack using different types of drones. These are actions that could threaten our security and freedom. There is no direct military threat to Denmark at the moment.
The Danish Armed Forces Command has issued a secret order to call up some reservists, but there is no official data on the number of reservists available to the Danish Armed Forces.
They are being gathered to check how they assemble, to verify who is on the lists, to find out if someone has gone abroad, or perhaps if someone has already passed away. They are gathered, checked to see what shape they're in, what condition, and then put through drills. They run, jump, and shoot. In other words, this is a constant effort to keep reservists in a state of combat readiness.
So what about armaments? Recently, Denmark announced the purchase of European air defense systems for $9 billion, which is the largest arms purchase in its history.
Denmark has long been seriously considering the comprehensive restoration of its military potential, which was unjustly neglected, indeed unjustly buried. The same situation applies to Norway and Sweden. They are once again actively revisiting their strategic doctrines and their military bases, which were previously sold off or decommissioned.
And that's not all. The Danish government has also increased its military budget and announced the purchase of long-range precision weaponry.
Everything we're hearing about Denmark, about them buying something, is because they need to replenish the weapons they've already sent to Ukraine and to replace those that have become inoperable or have been decommissioned. This is an attempt to be prepared for any turn of events that could happen literally in the next move in 2 years' time.
But of course, the fact that weapons are being purchased has upset Russia the most. There, the aggressor country called it sheer madness. And once again, they mentioned that Russia is being threatened.
For some reason, Russia is offended by everything. Any word from anyone, any action affects Russia. It has its own interests everywhere and sticks its long nose into everything. They don't pay attention to statements that Denmark or any other European country has invested large sums of money in their own defense. It's clear that this is unacceptable for Russia. They would prefer to keep everything as it is. Thank goodness for Europe, Russia is strong.
Meanwhile, Denmark's press service announced a new military aid package for Ukraine worth more than 400 million euros. And in the country ignoring more than 20 laws, they will speed up the construction of a rocket fuel plant for Ukraine.
This is business, and once again it's focused exclusively on Europe so that everything will be produced independently in Europe. tanks in Germany, planes in France, rocket fuel in Denmark, and they will divide all of this among themselves.
Of course, Denmark is not the only country that takes the Kremlin's provocations seriously. NATO is creating a rapid response brigade on the border with Russia, increasing its military budget, and even adopting the experience of Ukrainian soldiers.
Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well from which country you are watching us and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now let's continue. Things are about to get even more interesting. In Moldova, pro-Russian former journalist Gabriel Kelin, who was running in the parliamentary elections on September 28th on the Christian Social Union of Moldova party list, has been detained. This was reported by Newsmaker, citing their own sources. The publication reports that Kelin was detained on September 30th. He is suspected of illegally financing political parties through a Russian exchange and money laundering. According to the investigation, the money came from a Russian exchange that is banned in the European Union. During the search, Kelin was found to have cryptocurrency, which he received through several electronic wallets from an exchange in the Russian Federation that is banned in the EU. The funds were intended to finance the development of his party, the Christian Social Union of Moldova. Let me remind you, Gabriel Kelin became the head of the Christian Social Union of Moldova 3 months before the elections. In April 2024, Gabriel Kelin participated in an event organized by the Russian organization Eurasia, which is linked to the Kremlin, and on his social media, he spread narratives of Russian propaganda. Personally, I support and fully share Moldova's position. Like if you agree? Over 100 billion for the propagandists who pour lies into the ears of Russians, and more than 30 billion for maintaining Putin and his apparatus. That's how much, according to the draft state budget, Russians will pay out of their own pockets in 2026. Meanwhile, government spending on the needs of those very Russians will be cut. And more on Putin's budget policy for 2026 coming up.
The son will stand up for the father. That's a snippet from yet another propaganda show on a federal channel. Militarization of society and hatred towards Ukraine are broadcast there 24/7.
Let them see that behind the fathers stand their children, and that's millions.
Let them
think twice whether they really want to spoil relations with our country. That's true.
For such calls broadcast from the blue screens, someone has to pay, and pay a lot. Budget spending on state television channels. In 2026, it will rise to 106.4 billion rubles.
Spending on state television turned out to be 54% higher than forecasted. In the 2025 budget, the projected expenses for state TV in 2026 were indicated. Their total amount was 69.1 billion rubles, but in the published 2026 budget, it's already 106.4 billion.
Even entertainment channels such as CTC, Domashny, TV3, Piatnitsa, Zvezda, TNT, and Muz TV have received government subsidies. It's no surprise that mornings on these entertainment channels start out like this.
Cynicism, meanness, and double standards have long become integral elements of European democracy.
If Washington suddenly decides to militarize space, in total, overall,
according to the budget, in 2026 to 2028, the Kremlin will allocate almost 246 billion rubles for TV propaganda. And that's not the final figure. The head of the Kremlin didn't forget about himself either, or more precisely about his own upkeep. Next year, Russia will pay 33 billion rubles for the maintenance of Putin and his administration. And that's almost 2 billion rubles more than in the outgoing 2025.
Thus, on an annual basis, spending on the president and the presidential administration will increase by 5.5%. This is higher than the projected inflation rate for 2026, which, according to the central bank's target, is at 4%. At the same time, last year, spending on the maintenance of Putin and his administration grew by a record 25.5%. In total, over the years 2026 to 2028, more than 100 billion rubles are planned to be spent on the maintenance of the president and the administration.
The question is that enough? This is what we wanted. We are managing to solve the task we set for ourselves.
The state budget for 2026 is set at 40 trillion rubles, and 13 of those will go to national defense, that is, to the war against Ukraine. All social programs for Russians have been cut off at the root, and taxes are being raised, even though Putin himself said he wouldn't do that.
Putin's intrigue. Just 3 weeks ago, speaking at the Eastern Economic Forum, Vladimir Putin was telling everyone, thumping his chest, that of course spending needs to be increased on the special military operation, on infrastructure, on healthcare, on education, and that new sources of revenue must be found, but under no circumstances by increasing the fiscal tax burden so as not to strangle the economy or business. Just a couple of weeks, a few days passed, and here comes yet another increase in value-added tax.
The value-added tax in the Russian Federation is the main tax and accounts for about 40% of the aggressor's budget revenues. In other words, the average Russian pays for propaganda on TV, for maintaining Putin and his apparatus while only becoming poorer themselves. In the first half of 2025, Russians took out almost 20% more pawnshop loans than in the same period last year. People have started taking out pawnshop loans more often just to get by, but no one in the Kremlin cares about this.
Taiwan became the largest importer of Russian oil in the first half of 2025, despite its official statements supporting Ukraine and joining international sanctions against Russia. All of this has brought the Kremlin billions of dollars in revenue to finance the war. This is discussed in a joint report by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, the Taiwanese nonprofit Environmental Rights Foundation, and the German branch of the International Human Rights Organization, UJ World. According to the published report, in the first half of 2025, Taiwan imported Russian oil worth $1.3 billion, becoming the world's main buyer of Rosneft. Compared to the figures for the first half of 2024, imports of Russian oil to Taiwan this year have increased by 44%. Well, what can I say? It's a pretty good attempt to sit on two chairs at once because on the one hand, Taiwan is buying Russian oil, and on the other, it's joining economic sanctions against Russia and providing Ukraine with bilateral aid totaling $50 million. The report states that for the import of Russian energy resources, Taiwan paid Russia, just think about it, over $11 billion. This amount is 220 times greater than the aid provided to Ukraine. Such purchases brought $1.7 billion into Russia's budget. Analysts have calculated that this sum is enough to finance the production of 170,000 Geran-type drones, which Russia uses for attacks on Ukraine. I wonder how America will comment on all this. And what will the President of the United States, Donald Trump, say personally? Let's get our popcorn ready. Mandatory movement in groups and accompanied by guides. It's forbidden to take photos, wear jeans, and there are many other restrictions and oddities. Tourists who visited the North Korean vacations promoted by the Kremlin shared their impressions. Then it's definitely unforgettable.
Constant checks and walking alone is forbidden. It's also better not to wear shorts or jeans, and God forbid you block the statue of the leader. This isn't a brief description of the rules in a penal colony, but it's also about a prison called North Korea. For several months now, Russians have been voluntarily traveling there for vacations. No one shares any details about these trips. But now the curtain has been lifted a little, thanks to journalists from Verstka. A phone call is made.
If so,
if you take into account all the restrictions in North Korea, they should actually be paying you extra for this trip. But no, Russians pay quite a lot of money to escape from one prison to another. A trip to Pyongyang costs over $1,000. And that's not even counting the plane tickets, while the travel routes themselves never change. They've been the same for decades, says a Russian expert on North Korea.
It turns out that for Russian tourists, first of all, there's Pyongyang, then the special economic zone of Rason. Of course, there will be Ansan. Sooner or later, the Kalmar resort will open, this giant complex. And then the Myeohyang Mountains. The routes for foreign tourists are officially set and haven't changed for decades.
One of the first things Russian tourists do is sign documents about restrictions on photo and video recording. Russian tourists are also given a memo listing what is forbidden in North Korea. It would have been easier to write what is allowed, but the DPRK chose the complicated route. For example, tourists are advised not to wear shorts, but even more importantly, not to wear jeans. The reason is that it's American fabric. However, according to reports, tourists broke this rule. Whether they were forced to change clothes is unknown. An important requirement was to show respect to the leaders. Selfies in front of monuments and portraits are forbidden. And you also have to make sure that the leaders are captured in full height in the frame. It is also strictly forbidden to film the military construction sites and people engaged in physical labor.
They try to prevent people who are doing physical labor from being filmed so that it isn't obvious how poorly people live in North Korea and how many people there are doing manual work. Well, when it comes to the military, the leaders and all that, it's more or less understandable because that's how dictatorships work. But everything there is so secretive. And as for the leaders, they're sacred. It's practically like offending the feelings of the faithful.
As we've already mentioned, the travel route doesn't change. We won't describe the whole thing, we'll just focus on a few points. For example, during the trip, Russians are taken to a circus, a brewery, a young pioneer's courtyard, and a boarding school.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk to the children, but at the end of the tour, we were shown a concert. The highlight was a lively song to which the children danced joyfully against a backdrop of video footage showing rockets flying and exploding. On one rainy day, we were taken to a swimming pool with seawater. The water was absolutely icy. It was impossible to relax at the bottom, and inside the facility it was hot and stuffy. We went to the relaxation room where you could lie down on a mat, rest your head on a brick, and enjoy quiet meditative music. The same rockets were flying across the screen, flying and exploding.
Excursions are only conducted with a guide. Sometimes they might even sing Russian songs. But there is still a special fondness for the DPRK, for Soviet songs. Tourists are played music from Soviet war movies. In short, the whole trip is basically a journey to the USSR.
I think it's not all Soviet movies, not all Soviet songs, but the most ideologically charged ones. Because, of course, North Korea genuinely sees itself as the direct successor to the most refined and ideologically pure Soviet model. Shay?
There's nothing else like it. It's intriguing, especially for the older generation. They'll remember their youth, including watching how North Korean guides avoid difficult questions. Or let's say, blatantly feed you a pack of lies. You shouldn't provoke them. You need to understand their situation as well. And for the younger generation, it will also be interesting. So go ahead and visit. It's good to experience it again. It's interesting. It's safe.
When it comes to safety, the Russian expert was, of course, being sly in the DPRK. It's only safe if you keep your head down and don't ask unnecessary questions. A step to the left, a step to the right, without permission, it's forbidden.
The hardest thing was enduring the restrictions on freedom. That was truly oppressive. If during the trip to Pyongyang I didn't really notice it because there was so little time, then during the beach vacation it was sometimes unbearable and absurd. We couldn't even go from the beach to the hotel on our own. For that we had to gather a group and go with a guide.
This is indeed tourism, but it's actually even considerably worse than what foreign visitors could possibly do in the vast Soviet Union. And as for the Russian citizens themselves, it's about precisely the same as how Soviet people were able to travel abroad, during which every single group had a special, dedicated KGB officer, and Saika and Kiryusha were absolutely compelled to report everything, every single detail, to that vigilant KGB officer. And now when Russians come to North Korea without this specially assigned guide, who of course is also from the North Korean security services, they can't take a single step. And if they suddenly do take such a step, they could face consequences, even criminal liability.
In North Korea, they are especially vigilant to ensure that no foreign electronic storage devices enter the country. As Vestka reports, upon entry, every person must provide a detailed list of all electronic equipment they are bringing in, including flash drives and memory cards. And if even a single device is missing upon departure, there will be serious problems. However, the entire stay is essentially an unavoidable walk on a razor's edge, and even the slightest curiosity is punishable here.
Friends, Putin's allies, the Taliban, have deliberately cut Afghanistan off from the world. He has shut down the internet and telephone communications across the entire country, citing moral values, specifically the fight against depravity, as the reason. Now, in Afghanistan, people are trying to catch a signal at the Pakistani border. Footage has appeared online showing Afghans traveling en masse to the border to connect to the internet and at least send messages to their families. Nothing, lecturer, nothing. Let me remind you, just recently the Taliban completely shut down the internet across the entire country. People have found themselves isolated from the outside world. Banking operations, payments, and online education, which had become a lifeline for many women and girls, were all affected. The airport in Kabul was almost empty, with no signs of arrivals or departures. Afghan citizens living abroad reported that they could not contact their families. The country is in isolation. The media reports that the Taliban had been deliberately cutting off connections in the provinces for several weeks, but the capital was not affected until Monday. This is the first complete internet shutdown in Afghanistan's history under the Taliban regime. How do you view the actions of the Taliban? Write your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of our news? Let us know what we should change to become better. We will definitely take your feedback into account. And in the meantime, give this video a like to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon.